It's like an all Bundy day today. Ammon Bundy joining us this hour. And of course, Matt Bundy was with us at 7 o'clock this morning. And so I guess we have a day once a week or so where we have sometimes three Thompsons in studio, but we're almost setting a new record today. 5 minutes after 8 o'clock, it's 24 on Magic Valley this morning on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and News Radio 1310.com. Bill Colley with you, too. I'm here until 10 o'clock this morning on Magic Valley this morning. Hey, welcome back to our program, sir.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Bill. Look forward to it.
Hey, I wanted to start out quickly. We were talking off air, and of course, you were, I think, perhaps we could say one of the five most vocal people against pandemic restrictions, lockdowns, mandates over the course of the last couple of years in Idaho. And so we get this announcement out of nowhere yesterday. Of course, I wouldn't have known. I haven't been wearing a mask in I don't know how long. We get this announcement, though, that the governor says he's going to be rescinding his orders in a little over a month. You were not terribly impressed by his comments.
No, I wasn't at all. In fact, it was more about the actual factual statements that infactual statements that he made, non-factual statements that he made that really concerned me because he made some statements in his press release yesterday that are just factually incorrect and very concerning to me that what he's trying to do. He's hoping that the people of Idaho will take his word for it and forget what he's done to us over the last couple of years.
I was going to say, for a lot of people, I think that they were even unaware that these things were still in place. But by holding on to this for another month, it just gives him another 4 to 5 weeks to collect federal money. And in the long run, wasn't that what this was all about?
Yeah, and he even says it. I mean, he says that, he didn't do all these things is what his, press release yesterday says. He says, I didn't lock down Idaho. I didn't ban this. I didn't, force these things. He goes down through all of this, and I could get into the details. But then he says, what I did do is that I issued, that I issued the activation of the statewide public health emergency since the start of the pandemic has enabled the Federal Emergency Management Agency to cover costs. And he just goes down through. He says, I did it all, not for the health and safety of the people of Idaho. I did it all for federal money. And, which is actually true, because when he put us in under state of emergency on March 13th, on his own website, he says that we have one confirmed COVID case in the entire state. But he did that on March 13th, which was the very day that Trump announced a $50 billion relief packages to states that were in a state of emergency. And then a few days later, on March 25th, Governor Little put us in an extreme state of emergency. And that was the very same day that President Trump and Nancy Pelosi announced that there would be a $2 trillion relief packages available for the states that were in extreme state of emergency. So you watch Governor Little's patterns. He put us in a state of emergency March 13th and then extreme emergency, a state of emergency on March 25th. And he did it so that he can qualify the state of Idaho to get all of these federal funds.
And lots of people across the state ended up getting themselves in all sorts of trouble with the law, whether they were having a yard sale and, businesses shut down and the like, and nobody has ever said sorry. That's the part that you would think that if somebody decided they were going to build a fire to stop a bigger fire, wildfire, and they ended up accidentally burning down the hometown, they'd at least say they were sorry in a situation like that. But we had lives destroyed, and I've never heard an apology come from his office at all.
No, we had thousands of business owners went out of business, and people's lives were turned upside down, for a long period of time. And his very first statement that he quotes himself, he says, I kept Idaho open. That's what he says. Banned vaccine mandates. Those are both lies. Flat out lies. He says, I kept Idaho open, banned vaccine mandates, never issued mandates for vaccines or masks, Those are just lies. And then right here he says the emergency declaration served as an administrative function to recoup FEMA dollars for a variety of needs throughout Idaho. So I mean, I understand because he knows that politically he cannot say that he saved Idaho from COVID because people are not going to buy it. But he's taking a strategic path here, and he's saying, I didn't save Idaho from COVID, but what I did do is I used the emergency declaration to get billions of dollars from the federal government so that Idaho can benefit from them. And that's what he's going to be running on.
By the way, got a note that just came in. A writer in Twin Falls says, thank you for running as an independent. He says, you now have my vote. He said, it's time to get out of the two-party mindset. Too many rhinos are stampeding on our God-given rights. And when you reference all of the I in the governor's remarks, it's only a short walk to the royal we. It sounds very imperial or imperious, I guess. And that's the part I think that bothered me from the very beginning with all of this. Up until then, I don't think that I would have been a huge critic of his, but after seeing that, I just thought I'm not sure I'm comfortable with his personality type in the governor's office.
I'm right there with you, Bill. I would have no reason to be running right now if Governor Little would not have done what he did. I just wouldn't. I would have been just satisfied with the way things were going in Idaho, and I wouldn't have had much to say about it or do. But the fact of it is we have a huge problem, and he's the face of it. Just kind of going on here, he says here, let me get this. I apologize. I had it right here in front of me. He says, without the emergency declaration, we would not be able to provide historic tax relief. Well, so we know that he's claiming that Idaho is in a surplus. And then in his own declaration here, he's saying the only reason why we're in a surplus is because we got billions of dollars from the federal government, which is what we've been saying all along. But he's admitting it here. It's not because he's been so fiscally responsible with the taxes of the Idaho taxes. It's because he got $18.7 billion from the federal government, and now he's making it look like we have a surplus in Idaho. And he's admitting it in his own press conference or press release.
I got a note that just came in from a writer in Buell, and of course you're busy enough running for governor, but the writer says, "Would you consider running for U.S. Senate?"
No, I wouldn't consider that. I don't know what good I would do in Washington D.C. other than the FBI would probably just throw me in jail every other day.
Yeah, I think you've had some experience there. Here's another note. This comes in from a writer in Twin Falls, and he said, so does that mean that the governor defrauded the federal government? He said, interesting. Looks like he would be ineligible to run for commission of a felony.
Yeah, that's actually a really good point because he's totally admitting right here that we weren't in a disaster pandemic situation. He did it just to keep the people or just to get federal money. Now, an interesting thing about this bill is he made it so in his emergency order 2020-07, people can go look that up. He made it so that the money went directly to the office of the governor, and then he put a little committee together. And in his own order, it says that he appoints those in the committee. He appoints, and they serve the governor at his pleasure. And he put that, and then they're the ones that decide where all these billions of dollars go to. And he cut the legislature completely out of the process, has no legislative oversight. It just went directly from the federal government to the office of the governor, and then him and his buddies decided how they were going to spend it. So he truly enriched himself and gave himself more power than any other governor has ever had in the history of Idaho.
Of course, we had a very close vote in the House yesterday for repealing all of these orders. It was just a margin of a couple of votes, and sometimes these things don't fare nearly as well in the Senate. But I wondered if the fact that this thing actually got some traction in the House may have had may have pushed him along in making this decision, and maybe pushed him a little sooner than he would have liked to have done it.
Well, maybe, but I'm going to go back to his. I think you're right, Bill. But let me go back to this press release because this is a great segue to explain something else, because he says in here, he says only the governor can lawfully end an emergency declaration. That's his statement, and that is factually incorrect. The law states, the Idaho statutes say that the House and the Senate can concur on a joint resolution and end the emergency order at any time. And so, I don't know who's guiding him and directing him in this press release, but it's just clear full of lies, misrepresentations, and and factually not even quoting the stating the law correctly.
Got to ask you a quick question because somebody just brought up in a text message that obviously the change has been made. The last day to register or as Republican or Democrat for the primary is coming up March 11th. So that change I think has gone through. But with you now moving off into independent campaign, uh, do you are you getting I think in more response in the way when it comes to fundraising and the like because you're going to be around for a while.
Yeah, so our fundraising has stayed about the same. There was a little increase, but it kind of goes up and down. But we haven't seen a major decrease or increase in that. Our support has, I would say, increased. Definitely, our subscribers and so forth to have increased. Invitations to speak and to has been about the same, which we were really, really active before. So what I'm saying is that activity is still going on, very active. And I think people are going to be, they're watching very close to what's going to happen in the primaries. And we keep a very close eye on, we poll and we keep a close eye on what's happening. And we believe that we have positioned ourselves to be the only conservative Republican candidate in the generals in November, and pretty sure that that's what's going to happen. And our goal is to unite, all people who love freedom, love liberty in Idaho under one candidate. That would be myself, and going into one governor candidate. And we believe we can render all of this support from these different parties. And just kind of break that down, Bill, and I kind of rattled on here a little bit, but we know that a little over 50% of the people in the Republican Party are disgruntled with the party leadership. They're not happy with what they've been doing, how they haven't implemented the party platform, the corruption and kind of the wickedness in the Republican Party. A little over 50% of the people are not happy with the Republican Party leadership. And then we've got almost 310,000 unaffiliated voters in Idaho. So they don't want to be part of a party. And we know we'll get a bunch of support from them. We also have a little over 14,000 Libertarian and Conservative Party members in Idaho, and we know we'll get a ton of support from them. And then there's about 95,000 people that are conservative-minded that have moved from out of state in the last year and a half to 2 years, and we know we'll get a bunch of support from them. So if we can unite all these people together, those that are not happy with the Republican Party, not that they're going to change the party, we're not saying that, but I'm an independent candidate. I'm not running as any party. We can get them, get the unaffiliated voters, get the constitutional libertarian voters, and get those people that are conservative coming in, plus get a bunch more people to actually participate in the process. We have a really strong chance of winning the establishment winning over the establishment control here in Idaho.
Got a break coming up in about 30 seconds, but if people would like to know more about the campaign, where would you send them?
VoteBundy.com. Very simple. VoteBundy.com. There's tons of information, videos there.
And they can make a contribution too if they like.
They can. They can make a contribution. They can, send videos around. They can subscribe so I can communicate with them and keep them up to date.
Yep, I get your emails. We got more with Ammon Bundy on the way in just a few minutes. He's an independent candidate for governor in Idaho. We're at 23 at 20 minutes after 8 o'clock. Bill Colley on Magic Valley this morning on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, at newsradio1310.com. Ammon Bundy is an independent candidate now. He's left the Republican primary, independent candidate for governor in Idaho, which means he's going to be here one way or another right until November, right up until November. And we're at 8:23. It is 22 on Magic Valley this morning. Bill Colley as well on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and News Radio 1310.com. Um, a lot of great minds apparently think alike because we were talking during the 8 o'clock news break about this property tax proposal that is being floated around Boise and, in fact, having a sales tax increase with it, too. And during the break, we got a question about that, and somebody asks, what's your take on that?
Well, as part of the Keep Idaho, Idaho plan, I've been extremely vocal and have all over the state of Idaho proposed a much better plan than our current property tax system. And I believe we need to eliminate our current property tax system altogether because it is very detrimental to property rights here in Idaho. It also basically people are losing their homes every day, especially the elderly, or if you're disabled or lose your job for a long period of time. You can't pay that tax, which is increasing more and more, and the state is taking those homes away. And we need to make it so that, once we've paid for our home and we own our home, we need to make it so the state cannot take it. And so I'm proposing that we replace the current property tax system with a consumption tax, basically a tax that's paid up front, and then you truly own your home. And, Bill, I could go into, a lot of detail of why that needs to happen and the history of property tax, the history of this country, and how deteriorating to property rights our current property tax system is.
Got a note here from a writer, and the writer says if Brad Little doesn't win in the Republican primary, I guess that means either Bradshaw, Janice McGeehan, or Humphreys comes out on top. Would you still be in the general election in November?
We're prepared. We're prepared to go all the way to November. However that looks, there's a lot of decisions we'll have to make. And to be honest with you, statistically and looking at everything, I don't know that that's going to happen. I believe that Brad Little's probably going to prevail. But, we're prepared, but mostly we're preparing for Brad Little because that's what we believe is going to happen.
And then, obviously in the general, Shelby Ronstadt likely is the nominee for the Democrats, and he's got he might have a few votes in his hometown, but I don't think that he's going to be much of a factor. So it would become basically a two-person race between you and Governor Little.
That's correct. That's what we believe will happen. We certainly are preparing for that, and we're looking forward to debates with Governor Little. If he's going to try to pull the things that he's trying to pull in this press conference, we just welcome that, and we're going to continue to be extremely active, traveling all over Idaho for the next 8 months, educating people on what Idaho is, where our rights are, what happened to us, and how we could be this amazing state with freedom and prosperity just overflowing from us, and being an example to the rest of the world of how to apply principles of freedom. We believe that we can get this done, and we're excited to do it.
I'm going to squeeze a caller in. Caller, I've got about 2 minutes before the break, so we'll probably get to your response afterward. But go ahead.
Well, recently I went to the Lincoln Day banquet here in Burley, and I know that we raised, we did everything but what we were supposed to do before they actually spoke. So we had a fundraiser, and plus I paid to get in, $35 for one person. And when does the money that we raise for the Republican Party go to all Republican candidates, or do they pick and choose the establishment Republican candidates? I should know this. I don't know. But I know that also at the Lincoln Day banquet, like I said, We did everything everything but what we were supposed to do. And then the candidates only had 2 minutes to speak, and then they were cut off abruptly with a bell. And I'm telling you, this is no way for us to meet our candidates when it's supposed to be some sort of celebration. And I can't think of one damn thing to celebrate. I'll hang up.
Well, I think Ammon, when that happens, the money is saved until after the primary, right? And then it helps fund the candidacies.
I believe that most of it is, and I'll say right up front, when I filed to run for governor as a Republican, the chairman, Tom Luna, came out publicly with a press release. And even though a month before he had vowed that he was going to help all Republican candidates, he came out and the Republican Party came out and vowed that they were not going to support financially or do anything to support me in my candidacy, even though I was a Republican. So they do pick and choose who they're going to support, who they're going to put their money behind and their influence behind.
We've got more on the way with Ammon Bundy. He's an independent candidate for governor in Idaho. And more of your questions and comments, too, in the next half hour. Call at 8:30. It's close enough. We're at 20. Bill Colley on Magic Valley this morning on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and News Radio 1310.com. Ammon Bundy, he's with us until 9 o'clock this morning. He is a candidate for governor in Idaho, running as an independent. It is 8:34. We're at 25 on Magic Valley this morning with Bill Colley on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and News Radio 1310.com. Got an interesting comment that came in from a writer in Jerome, and he says that during the pandemic and when people wanted to challenge the governor's orders, he said that the attorney general basically worked as the governor's personal lawyer, and he said that he has to go as well. Of course, he's in a three-way race too, but it does seem that a lot of people in government circled the wagons when that came along, and nobody wanted to, I guess, be the person that put their head up above the foxhole and said, I think this might not be right.
Well, Lawrence Wasden, he's been the Attorney General for 20 years, and he was a Deputy Attorney General for 10 years before that. So he's been there for a long, long time. And, yeah, he basically justified legally everything that Governor Little was doing, and they did it for power. I know that it seems like what everybody says when it comes to these situations, but for power and money, that's what they did. And he issued opinions that the governor was doing things legally that were, when it comes to the emergency order. But the law is very clear, and the people don't have to have an attorney to interpret the law when it's this clear. It says that the governor can only keep the people of Idaho or the state in emergency order for 30 days. And then if it's an extreme situation, he can extend it for another 30 days. Well, then Lawrence Wasden, Attorney General, says, well, we interpret that as that he can keep doing it every 30 days. He can keep renewing it every 30 days. So that's what they did. Every 30 days, Governor Little would issue another proclamation saying that the state of Idaho is still in extreme emergency. I'm upping it again for another 30 days. We know that that's completely contrary to the law because it puts the people of Idaho in a dictator-type government rather than a Republican representative government. And so, but this is Lawrence Wasden. Don't forget that name. He's got to go. This is one of the things that he did that was really detrimental to the people of Idaho and justified Governor Little in his actions. And it's despicable. He knows darn well that the law does not read that way, but he didn't believe that anybody would challenge him, and so far, no one has.
I got to say that that of the two people who decided to stand up and get involved in the primary, would there be any one of those that you would favor?
Yeah, for sure. Raul Labrador.
Yeah.
I like Raul. I know him personally. I am in no way shy with saying that I endorse him and support him. I believe he would be a very, very good Attorney General, and that the people of Idaho will be much safer under his interpretations of the law than under our current Attorney General.
I get the idea that everyone would respect everybody else's office in that sense too.
Absolutely, you're exactly right.
Hey, got another break coming up in a couple of minutes, but before we do, when you referenced a consumption tax replacing the property tax earlier. Dorothy Moon told me, I think 2 months ago, that there'd been some discussion among some legislators about removing property tax altogether. And of course, we saw this other proposal get floated, which seems to be getting fast tracked, I should point out, really fast tracked. But at the time, I thought when she mentioned that perhaps something akin to, we've heard about the fair tax being floated nationally. Would something like that work on a state level in Idaho?
Well, so when I'm talking about a consumption tax and replacing the current property tax system, I'm actually, just specifically talking about the sale of property. There has been talk about implementing a, consumption tax across the board, except for groceries for food. I do support that, but just to be specific about what I'm proposing, we replace the current property tax system with is a consumption tax, and that would be like a 3 or 4% or a 5% tax that is on the value of the property when it's sold, and then that would go to fund our sheriff's departments, our roads and infrastructure, our public schools and so forth, and it would replace the current property tax system and give the revenue to the county and to the state that's needed, and make it so that we own our own homes after we pay our homes off.
Got about 30 seconds before the break again. Can you give out the contact information once more?
Yeah, so votebundy.com. Again, votebundy.com. Go there, subscribe. Then I'll communicate with you. I won't overbear you with communication, but communication is the first line of defense. You can also, look at the Keep Idaho plan. Download it, share it with your friends. There's lots of videos and explanations. It's a very thorough website, votebundy.com.
More on the way with Ammon Bundy, independent candidate for governor in Idaho. It's 8:40, and we're at 24 with some snow still falling in the Magic Valley. Bill Colley on Magic Valley this morning on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and News Radio 1310.com. Ammon Bundy with us for a few more minutes this morning on Magic Valley this morning on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and News Radio 1310.com. It's 22. We're at 840 E3. Bill Colley with you until 10 a.m. Hey, you referenced school funding a little bit earlier, and I was thinking, and I mentioned Dorothy Moon on a particular thought that she had on property tax, but she also had been proposing a bill that would have given people some school choice when it comes to where their kids can actually go to school, and they would have, she said technically it wasn't a voucher program, and it didn't get very far because the argument was it violated the state constitution. But as I understand, there was the court ruling on the Blaine Amendment in Montana, which says essentially you can't have that in your state constitution. So if someone were to seriously challenge that in Idaho, I would imagine that we could end up with some sort of school choice system based on vouchers. Do you think I'm on the right track legally?
I think you are on the right track. There needs to be a tremendous amount of challenging federal control inside the state. And it needs to come from the state making that argument, not, the U.S. government versus, some family or some person. It needs to be the state. Because you're absolutely right. I mean, education here in Idaho should be determined by the people of Idaho, not Washington, D.C. But it comes back to, well, why does Washington, D.C. have their claws in it? Well, because we take their money. About a third of our budget, our state budget, comes from the federal government, and we need to free ourselves from that. There's things that we have to do to become free from that, but that's why they have their claws in us in every way. It seems like because we are being restricted from using our own land and resources, and we can't generate enough wealth to pay our own bills. So therefore, we have to go to the federal government. And the federal government never gives any dime away without strings attached to it. And so that's putting us as a people and as a state in what the founders called undue obedience. And that's where we're at.
Yeah, and I was thinking about a conversation I had with State Senator Christy Zitto, who got a call and someone said that in Glens Ferry that they were being taught CRT. So she called the superintendent, and he said, "No, we don't officially have that." But then he admitted, he said, individual teachers might decide they can. So that's the problem, I think, for most parents is they don't know what their kids are learning, and the schools are kind of doing a wink, wink, nod, nod, and so a particular teacher can be proselytizing, to your children all day long. And it seems to me that parents should be able to say no, and they should have that option.
Yeah, and if you put the power in the parents' hands, and then if the parents will do their duty in making sure they understand, what their children is being taught, then all of a sudden you just fix that problem. Because if if parents can decide whether their child's going to go, whether the funding for their child goes to that school, or it can go to a school, a private school down the street, or a charter school, or wherever it might be, all of a sudden now there's accountability that hasn't been in the public school system since almost the beginning. And the administrators will say, look, we can't have teachers teaching critical race theory. The parents don't want it, and the parents will pull their children out, and we will lose our funding. That's accountability. That's the way government is supposed to work. That's why Congress has power to control the budget over the bureaucrats. We know that's always a battle, but that's the idea. Whoever controls the money has the influence, and that control should be in the parents' hands.
I always think of the movie Pale Rider, where you had a fellow who he controlled the town, and he used his political influence, and you referenced people being wicked earlier. He used it in a wicked way. And in our own government, we tend to think of Idaho as being somewhat of a breath of fresh air compared to what you might find on the left coast. But you have a lot of special interest, whether they be education, teachers unions, or other large donors and people like that who exercise somewhat of the same type of control that character did in that movie. How do we break that?
Well, we have. That's a great question, and we. The reason why Idaho is so entrenched in that is because we've been a one-party state for so long. So there hasn't been that, you know, challenge on power. Just for example, Wasden, he's been in there for 30 years. His power has not been challenged, and he is just like any other person. Ultimate power brings ultimate corruption, and that's what's been happening. And these, how long has Governor Little been in office, in public office? 135 years? I don't know, a long, long time. And so they have not, their power has not been checked and balanced. And so corruption has grown, and it will continue to grow. Cronyism has grown, and it will continue to grow until we can challenge that power. And that's what we're doing. That's what my campaign is all about. I am running as an outsider, someone who they don't like. In fact, they even hate. And I am uniting people all over Idaho who love liberty more than they love their party. And we are challenging, and we will continue to challenge this power. That's how you break it up. And I intend on doing that, and I'm doing it for the benefit of my neighbors, my friends, my family, my children, because I do believe Idaho needs to be different.
We talked earlier about the people who are moving into the state, and I was sharing with you during one of the breaks that I got to meet several people who they matched that description when I was doing a remote broadcast at a gun store last week, and they are much more conservative and much more bound by their values and their beliefs than they are by old family connections, for instance. And as they move into Idaho, they don't care that somebody's uncle was a particular power player or that their dad was a particular power player. And so it does seem that as the population grows here that we're going to break a lot of that down anyway. It's just naturally going to happen. We just don't know when.
The timing, I believe, is right for what we're doing. I just believe people are kind of ready for a change. They've seen what the status quo has given them, and the reality is we can lose freedom. We can permanently lose freedom here in Idaho and in this country. And the mechanisms that are in place to protect and secure that freedom, like the state of Idaho, needs to be used to secure liberties, and it's not going to happen under the establishment. So people are seeing that, and I believe that we're certainly moving that direction, and this is the right time to have someone like me as an independent candidate in this race.
We're at 8:51. Ammon Bundy joining us this morning on Magic Valley this morning on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and News Radio 1310.com with Bill Colley. And 24. Perhaps we'll make it back into the 30s today, but there's a big warm-up coming through the weekend and into early next week. We finished redistricting here some time ago in the state, and a lot of people have some very convoluted new districts. A writer was curious as to your opinion about how that went and how quickly the court ruling came down.
I don't, there's a lot of boundaries. I don't know in the, Twin Falls area, how that went down. I do know that it's certainly an opportunity for the establishment to control power and to change power. For example, like up north in your Panhandle area of Idaho, they cut Heather Scott out of her district. I mean, literally, it's like a line, and then you see where her home is, and it's like jogs over just to cut her out of the district because she has been a powerful force for liberty up there, and they want her to lose power. There's things like that that have gone on that are concerning to me. But as we do grow, we have to change our districts too. I mean, I understand that. You don't want a densely populated district controlling other districts. So, there's kind of two sides to this, but it really comes down to who gets to decide the district boundaries. And in some cases, I don't think it was beneficial to the liberty of Idaho.
We have seen, though, a lot of legislators just decide that they're going to pursue other things. Senator Zito is going to work as a lobbyist after the session ends, and you've got Dorothy Moon leaving the legislature, running obviously for Secretary of State. But it could change the whole chemistry of the state legislature, the House and Senate, because they were from a particular faction of the party that is underrepresented, and if they leave and they don't get replaced by people from that faction, let's say you end up as governor, but you're basically dealing with status quo. It's going to be a little difficult to get any agreement over there.
Yeah, it certainly will. It is a concern that I have with those who are running and the positions they're running. I'm sad to see Christy Zito, Senator Zito, leave the Senate and others. I don't blame them, though. It's just such a battle. And, in Idaho, you think that, well, we're just liberty-minded. It should be really easy. And to be honest with you, when it comes to the people of Idaho, that is true. But we have establishment people that their policies are more democratic, liberal policies, but they're running as Republicans. And it makes it very difficult for someone who truly loves liberty to do any good in the legislature. And so it's going to be a battle. There's no doubt about it. If I get in there and these other people are not in there, that's just going to make it more difficult. But again, we have to say, are we just going to give Idaho up, or are we going to keep fighting for it?
Got about 5 or 4 minutes to go. A friend of mine who runs a large apple orchard told me the other day that he's paying $1,400 a ton for fertilizer, and he sent me an email. He said, how would you feel about paying $10 for an apple? He didn't say plural. He said apple, singular. And then I saw a fellow on television last week from Iowa who's a soybean farmer who said, at the current rate of inflation, we could see people paying an average family $1,000 more per month for groceries, which is just, that's like Venezuela or Zimbabwe. But we have a grocery tax in this state, and you wonder if suddenly people are paying twice as much for groceries, that means the state's really raking in the revenue. Is it time to finally say enough of that and come up with some other formulation?
Well, I think the solution to that, Bill, as far as we can go, is to become independent. Nitrogen fertilizer is outrageous right now, and everybody has to have, all the farmers have to have that in order to be able to produce the crops they need. Well, nitrogen fertilizer is in part created with natural gas. Well, we have a tremendous amount of supply of natural gas, but guess what? The federal government is controlling our land and resources and won't allow us to access and use it. We in Idaho need to fight these battles to become independent. I have 365 trees, and 240 of them are apple trees. And I understand on a small scale what this farmer is going through. I mean, fertilizer is just outrageous. You can never justify it on the back end. No one's going to buy your apples, especially when we're bringing them in from China for 20 cents a pound. And so we have to become independent. We have to start thinking about what's going on in our state, about our resources, about those that are producing, and these are the things that we need to start thinking about, and not about bringing in a massive data center for Facebook that's just going to suck up our natural resources and give the people of Idaho almost nothing back.
Yeah, that's one of those short-term fixes. It looks good on election day to say, here's 100 jobs, but down the road, a decade from now, we're going to regret that, I believe.
I agree.
Hey, we got about a minute to go. Anything you want people to remember?
Just know that Idaho is in a battle for its conservative soul right now. I know that it's a great place to live. It's a great place to be. But we are on a path that if we don't win this battle, we will become an Oregon, a California, Washington. Every one of those states were ultra-conservative states not very long ago. If you would have told me that Nevada was going to be a liberal state when I was going to high school and living in Nevada, I would have told you, no way, that's where I grew up. We were rugged individuals, lived close to the land and the resources, and there was no way that we were going to become a liberal democratic state. And now they are, along with all these others. And Idaho is following and going down that exact same path. So if we want to save Idaho, we have to act, and we have to decide what we're going to do. And I'm just providing a choice.
I thank you much for your time. We'll be talking again probably in a few weeks or so.
Thank you, Bill. It's always a pleasure.
You too, sir. God bless. Take care now.
You too.
Ammon Bundy joining us this morning, independent candidate for governor in Idaho. News time is coming up at 9 o'clock, and we're at 22 on Magic Valley this morning on News Radio 96.1 FM, 1310 KLIX, and newsradio1310.com.